So, Arrested Development sucks now, huh? What happened? I mean, it used to be so good, and now it's just...
You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say or do can and will be used against you in the court of law. You have the right.
I mean, how do you get from being a show that was once described as the best sitcom on TV to whatever the hell this is? Well, let's see if we can't figure that out together. In its original run, Arrested Development lasted for 3 seasons between 2003 and 2006. It was very well regarded, but not a whole lot of people were watching. It was a cult hit, and had a lot of impact on a lot of people, not least of all the careers of its ensemble cast, who have basically all become huge stars since then. Its comedy was so layered that it is still eminently rewatchable. There's some gags that you won't pick up on until the second or third viewing.
Never thought I'd miss a hand so much.
The characters, while not exactly good people, are all easily enjoyable to watch. But then it ended, and its fan following only grew. More and more people discovered the show, and the desire to see it return in some way grew along with it. There was, for a long time, talk about them making a movie, but nothing was crystallising. That is, until... In 2013, a 4th season of Arrested Development was finally produced. It was all released simultaneously on Netflix on the 23rd of May 2013, being one of the first major things that was produced specifically for the platform. People were pretty excited to see one of their favourite shows return after 7 years, but there was a problem. The increased career success of the vast majority of actors in the show meant that they were ridiculously busy. They all had hugely conflicting schedules, so it was damn near impossible to get them all together in one place for any extended period of time. So a new version of the show was needed. Instead of the previous ensemble-based comedy, they changed to a style where each episode focused on a different individual member of the Bluth family. They'd occasionally cross paths with each other, but never really for significant amounts of time. So instead of trying to keep his family together, Michael is trying to get the rights to make a film of their story, and going around with Andy Richter, Carl Weathers and Warden Gentles for some reason. Job is driving around a musician, then he's maybe falling in love with his rival Tony Wonder. Tobias is making a Fantastic Four musical with his new junkie girlfriend Debris, and it just doesn't really work overall. The show's biggest strength had always been just how well the pretty sizable cast worked together. It didn't really matter how you teamed them up, because somehow every group worked. So when you split them apart like this, so much energy is just lost. Though there is something unique about the structure that still makes it somewhat interesting to watch. Everything is very tightly scripted in the way that the different episodes intersect and influence each other. But then, once again, the show's future was uncertain. Everyone was busy again, and the response to the new episodes wasn't really warm enough to warrant dropping everything to get them back together to do more. So we wouldn't end up seeing more Arrested Development for 5 years. And then, in 2018, we finally got the release of more new Arrested Development. Kind of. On May 3rd, 2018, they re-released the 4th season as Arrested Development Fateful Consequences. This was a re-edited version made to try and recapture some of the feel of the original series, with the episodes more balanced between the multiple characters. This is definitely an experiment. By restructuring the whole season like this, you get a totally different rhythm to the entire thing. Episodes are more balanced between the different characters, the episodes are shorter, and there are more of them. It's weird. And it kind of works in places. It is nice to see characters you might not have had a lot of time with the first time around appearing throughout, like Buster. He was barely in season 4, and now he's there throughout the whole thing. That's the big benefit. But it can also lead to their lack of connection feeling more apparent. I mean, it's still the same material, it's just been reshuffled. Plus, the bouncing around between the stories so much requires more of Ron Howard's narration to keep the flow going. So a whole lot of time is taken up by that, which gets old after a while. Then there's the issue that the material was written for the separated format. So when you restructure it like this, a lot of the jokes just don't work anymore, because they were reliant on that structure. Jokes suddenly happen too close together or too far apart compared to where they originally were. So overall it was a decidedly mixed bag, and I'm unsure as to why they thought it was a good idea to do it, especially so close to the release of the 5th season. Speaking of which, let's look at the worst the show has ever been. They released Season 5 in 2 8-episode parts in 2018 and 2019, and it is ever so very not good. The big takeaway from the previous series had obviously been that people wanted the cast more connected, and so they made attempts to do that, but when your cast are still all really busy, that's difficult. More of them are together more often, but still not enough for it to really feel convincing. You'll notice that for most of the show, George Michael is only really interacting with Maybe and occasionally Michael, or Tobias, particularly in the second half of the season, is always off doing stuff with his newly discovered son Murphy Brown and his junkie girlfriend Debris from Season 4. For all the issues with Season 4, they at least scripted around their limitations, but here they're trying to pretend like the limitations don't exist when they still clearly do. So it makes for a miserable experience as the tired, overworked cast desperately try to sell it. Can someone please just let Will Arnett take a nap? He looks exhausted. He just made Show Dogs. He's sad. He's not feeling good. Come on, let him take a nap. And it leads to a lot of the scenes feeling rushed. In its prime, this was one of the tightest shows on TV, but now it feels like they've got the minimum amount of takes because Jason Bateman has to be back on the set of Ozark tomorrow, and they're hoping they can cover it up in editing with some Ron Howard narration and what is truly some of the worst ADR I've ever seen done in a TV show. I mean, they've got Jeffrey Tambor's mouth covered in this shot so they could do it. It's so obvious and lazy! On top of all this, they're stuck working with material that was set up from the previous heavily disliked season, a lot of which centres around Lindsay running for Congress, which is bad because Portia de Rossi has basically retired from acting. But Mitch Hurwitz still tried to write her into the show anyway, even after she said she didn't want to do it.
I called Mitch Hurwitz, who's the creator of Arrested Development, and I said, if there is a season 5, I won't be doing it because I quit acting. And he seemed really understanding, and he totally got it. We had a great conversation, and then he wrote me into 5 episodes.
So a huge focus of the season just isn't there. Surely at that point you'd realise you have to go back to the drawing board. But the Congress plot wasn't the only political idea they were working off. The other is the construction of a wall on the US-Mexico border. And they are aware of the irony of this becoming a genuine thing in the world since they initially made jokes about it in 2013, and so now the show is set sometime in 2016, and they keep making jokes about how Trump will never be president, but they also keep bashing Hillary Clinton, and it just feels so tired at this point. I feel like they could, and probably should, have moved in a different direction to this. But hey, I'm sure there's nothing else that could possibly happen that would ever make this show hard to watch. You know, I don't really know why I tempt fate like that, to be honest. So, in early 2018, allegations of sexual harassment and abusive behaviour came out against Jeffrey Tambor from a number of people on the Amazon Prime show Transparent, and he was summarily fired from that production. But at this point, they had already filmed Arrested Development Season 5, and he played a significant role. In fact, 2 significant roles, and he couldn't exactly be cut. Fair enough, you can't remake the entire show at that point. So, I don't begrudge him being there as much as I would if they were starting to make more now, and he was still involved. But it certainly can affect a person's perception of the show when watching it. I mean, I can't just see George and Oscar Bluth anymore, I also see sexual harasser and noted pervert Jeffrey Tambor. Separating art from artist isn't always easy, especially when it happens so close to the show coming back. This was all compounded when, in the run-up to the new series being released, several members of the cast had an interview with the New York Times, and Jessica Walters discussed the inappropriate behaviour of Tambor towards her on the set, being overly aggressive and shouting at her. You can tell from the audio of this interview just how much this incident upset Walters.
Jason says this happens all the time. In almost 60 years of working, I've never had anybody yell at me like that on a set.
And then, to double down on the awfulness of this, his male co-stars defended his behaviour, while Walters has to keep saying how it's not normal, with only Aaliyah Shawkat seeming to understand her side of things. It's really disheartening to listen to, and it really sets your mind into a bad place when you come to watch the show with the knowledge of this interview in your head. It would be dishonest of me to say that my preconceptions and disappointment in the cast of the show didn't affect my experience watching what is already not very well made TV. It's a myth that we can be objective about this sort of thing. So my opinions were already low going into the first half of season 5 based on this, and then they were even lower going into the second half because of how much I didn't like the first half. They basically doomed themselves. So yeah, Arrested Development feels kind of done at this point. It was one of the greatest shows at its peak, but since it came back it's just been one bizarre, sad, tiring failure after another. The off-screen actions of some of its major players have only further served to add to the disenchantment of a deeply mediocre product that wasn't worth saving. So I guess just don't watch it. If I just said that from the start, this video would have been over in like a minute. That's a significant amount of soy milk to chug straight. Oh, I don't know why that seemed like a good idea. Thank you so much for watching this video. Be sure to let me know what you thought of it in a comment below. Click subscribe and click on one of the videos over here to watch. If you'd like to support the show, then click down in my Patreon, it's down there. You know, I've realised I forgot to turn on the background lights throughout this whole thing. And now I can't get them to come on. Come on!